Hi everybody, you welcome back to my channel. Happy New Year. I hope you've had a good start in the year. And I appreciate you coming on the channel today. Thanks so much for always coming and supporting the channel. And if you're coming in today for the first time, thanks so much for coming. I really appreciate you and I hope you subscribe by the end of this tutorial. In today's video, I'll be showing you how to make a simple pencil dress. It's a beginner-friendly tutorial, not hard at all, very simple, straightforward, I promise. So I'll see you at the end of the tutorial. Take care. So here we'll be drafting our pencil dress. You need your pattern paper. So here I'm folding my pattern paper over so I can draft the front panel and the back panel. So you want to start by drawing a line at the edge of the paper, which is your start line. That represents your start line, and you want to leave like half an inch allowance because you will need it. Now you want to move on and add your neckline allowances. First, take 3 inches for your neck depth because that's the standard neck depth measurement, and I'm gonna be taking 3 inches for the neck width as well. You can decide to make yours 3.5 by 3.5 instead of 3 by 3. 3.5 inches by 3.5 inches, or you can go for a V-neck or a square neck. It's up to you what neckline you choose to have. So this neckline is for the front panel. Now I'm gonna add the neckline for the back. So for the back, I've come down by 1 inch for the neck depth, and I'm gonna connect it to the 3 inches of the front width. So they're gonna have the same width but different neck depth. Right. Now I'm gonna move on to add the shoulder measurement. The shoulder measurement, whatever you have, divided by 2, then make your marking, then add half an inch seam allowance. Next, for your shoulder slope, you want to come down by the half an inch seam allowance by 1 inch. You come down by that extra seam allowance by 1 inch and connect it to the neckline. Next, you want to divide your armhole circumference by 2. Whatever you have, you want to add it. So you want to come down from the shoulder slope, not the shoulder line. So from the shoulder slope, you want to add half of your armhole circumference. Then you want to rule a line across that bit. So that's where the armhole circumference ends. So that's your chest line now. That will form your chest line. Now you want to rule the armhole line, half of your armhole circumference, and that's your chest line there. Right, we're gonna move on to the next stage, and the next stage is from your shoulder to your bust point. Your shoulder line to your bust point. Whatever you have, you wanna make the marking and draw a line across as well, and that's your bust line. That's your bust line drafted now. Now you want to add your shoulder to waistline measurement. Whatever your shoulder to waistline is, you want to make the marking. Right. That's the waistline. Now, shoulder to hip line. We're going to make the marking for the shoulder to hip line. Wherever your shoulder to hip line is, you want to mark, and that's it. And after the hip line is the dress length. You want to add the dress length, and once you've added the dress length, you want to add your 1 inch hem allowance. So that's me adding the 1 inch hem allowance. Here I'm just trimming that extra bit away. This is what you should have once you finish drafting your vertical measurement. Now we'll move on to the next stage. So that's the chest line, that's the bust line, that's the waistline, the hip line, then the dress length, and the seam allowance there, which is your hem allowance. So that's all you need for your dress construction in terms of the length. Now we will move on to adding our horizontal measurement. Before then, you want to find the midpoint of your armhole because we're going to be drafting the armhole for the front panel. Find the midpoint over there and come in by ½ inch. Come in by ½ inch, make the marking and draft your front panel armhole. Once you've drafted the front panel armhole, for the back armhole, you don't need to come in. Just the way it is, just make your curve. Just make the armhole curve. And once that is done, you want to start adding your dart allowance because your dress is going to have dart allowance. So for the dart allowance, you need your bust to bust measurement. Whatever your bust to bust is, divided by 2 and add it here. So the bust to bust I'm using here is 8 inches, divided by 2 is 4. So I'm adding 4 on the bust line, on the waistline, and the hip line. The bust line, the waistline, and the hip line for your dart allowance. So you want to rule a line to connect the 3 together. The bust line, the waistline, and the hip for your dart allowance. Then you want to come down from the bust line by 1 inch. And from the hip line, you want to go up by 3 inches. Make the marking. Then you're going to go to the waistline and take 1 inch for your dart allowance. Half and half on each side of the line. So half there, then another half, which makes the 1 inch dart allowance. Now you want to connect the dots together to form your dart. Don't forget, for your dart allowance is your bust to bust measurement divided by 2. If your bust to bust is 9 inches, that means you need 4½. And if it's 8 inches, you will need to mark 4 inches like I'm doing here. Then construct your dart. So that's our dart drafted. Now move ahead and add the bust measurement. So on the chest line, you want to add your bust circumference divided by 4. Your bust circumference divided by 4. Whatever you have, you make the marking on the chest line, right? Then add your 1 inch seam allowance. So I've added the bust circumference divided by 4 there, plus 1 inch seam allowance. So the same applies to the bust line as well. It's the same for it. So the same for the bust and the chest line. Then when you move on to the waistline, you want to divide your waist circumference by 4. Whatever you have, you're going to make the marking. Don't forget we have 1 inch there for our dart. You want to add the 1 inch dart allowance back. Then you want to add your 1 inch seam allowance. So we've got the waistline circumference divided by 4, the 1 inch dart allowance, and the 1 inch seam allowance on the waistline. Then we'll move on to the hip line. So your hip line divided by 4. Whatever you have, make the marking. Then add your 1 inch seam allowance. You don't need to add the dart allowance there. You only need the seam allowance. So you go down to your dress length, right? Because it's a pencil dress, you want to subtract 1.5 inches from your hip line measurement, right? The seam allowance not included. So you want to subtract 1.5 inches off your hip line circumference and come down to the dress length and add the measurement. So your hip circumference divided by 4, whatever you have, minus 1.5 inches, then mark it down on your dress length over there. Then add 1 inch seam allowance as well. Add 1 inch seam allowance. Then fold over. You want a perfect hem allowance when you're stitching up. So you want to fold that bit over like that. And you leave it till when you cut. Now you want to connect all these dots together. I'm just gonna highlight the 1 inch seam allowance over there with dots. So I just applied a few dots. So that's my 1 inch seam allowance. Now we're gonna add seam allowance on the shoulder. So this is optional. You can decide to leave the front panel shoulder and just add the 1/2 inch to your back panel shoulder. So there are 2 ways to this. Either you add to the front and the back, or you add only to the back panel. Whatever works best for you. But here I'm adding on the front panel and I will add on the back panel as well. That's why you need that extra bit allowance by your shoulder line there. Now I'm gonna proceed to cut. I made a big mistake here. I was cutting the front panel with the back panel, and here I was supposed to cut only the front panel, not including the back panel. So I realized I made a mistake at this point, but I carried on. Right, I just carried on. I will show you later in the video where I made my corrections. I had to add extra pattern paper to draft the back panel. So on the armhole, you want to cut only the back panel armhole. Don't cut the front yet because it's deeper than the back panel. Only cut the back panel armhole. The same applies to the neckline. Only cut the back panel neckline. Don't cut the front yet. We need the back gone, then we can carry on with the front. But like I said, I cut the back and the front together here, which was a huge mistake. I should have just cut out the front and draft the back on its own. So now I'm just going to transfer the dart and the lines on the back panel. Everything I have on the front panel will be transferred to the back, which is the waist, the bust line, the hip, then the dart. That's the folded over bit, the hem allowance, as you can see. So when you hem it in, it gives you that perfect hem. So as you can see, I'm transferring the front panel to the back panel. If you know you're not steady with pins and all that to transfer what you have on the front panel, you can go ahead and do a fresh drafting of the back panel. Make sure you do a fresh drafting, but if you can pull this off, that'll be fine. So I've only applied pins and it's easy for me. I'm marking here. I'm making all the markings, the chest line, the bust line, the waist, the hip, then also the dart was transferred. You don't need to transfer the armhole and the neckline. Don't forget, when we were cutting, we cut the armhole as the back and the neckline as the back panel. You only need to deal with the front panel when it comes to neckline and armhole after the complete drafting. Here I'm separating the front panel from the back panel. Like I said at the beginning, I made a mistake where I cut both the front and back, as the same on the side without the zip allowance and other alterations made. But I will say if you were using a stretch fabric to make this dress, you do not need any zip allowance. You do not need a zip allowance, right? If you're using a stretchy fabric to make this dress, you only need to alter the neckline, which you will make the neckline wider. But on this occasion, I'm showing you how to make a pencil dress with a zip at the back. Now you want to move ahead now and cut the neckline for the front panel. So you want to cut the neckline and also the armhole. If you are a beginner, you want to take note of this. The front armhole and neckline is different from the back. Here we have the front now and the back panel. So I'll carry on and work on the back panel. I'll show you what we should have done with the back panel if we were constructing it on its own. Right. So I want you to imagine now that we're just constructing the back panel, but we have all the chest line, bust line, waist and hip, then the dart. So what would happen here, because our back isn't straight, I'm gonna come in by the waist by 1 inch. By the zip allowance over there, right? So because our back isn't straight, I'm gonna come in by 1 inch and hide it over the other side there of the waist. So you want to watch what I'm doing. Here I've not added any zip allowance, but I'm just coming in by 1 inch. You only want to come in properly by the waistline on the back panel. So come in by 1 inch and alter the back. Connect it to the bust and the hip line. It's gonna be like a flat triangle, almost like a flat stretched triangle shape, but a bit curved. Right, so you just want to watch what I'm doing here. So from the 1 inch on the waistline there, I'm gonna blend it in to the bust line like that. Right, and blend it into the hip. Take your time and do the blending properly. So blending in to the hip line and make sure it's curvy round the waistline and not sharp. As you can see, we've gone in by 1 inch, so we've lost our waistline. So this is a problem. So you want to go on the side and add back the 1 inch. All I had to do was to get my extra pattern paper and attached it to the main bodies. You need a sellotape You don't have to go through this. You don't have to make the mistake I made. But if you made the same mistake like me, then you want to add an extra pattern paper and reconstruct like I'm doing here. So I'm adding back the 1 inch there, and I'm gonna reconstruct the sides. So I'm gonna do a blending in as well on that bit. So that's it there. So the 1 inch has been added over there. So we haven't lost anything now. 1 inch taken there and the 1 inch added on the side. So I'm gonna go ahead, grab my scissors and just cut out. So that's it there. Once it's cut out, you should have a nice blended bodies. Now I'm gonna go ahead with my cotton. Once I finish cutting this bit, I will add my zip allowance. At the end of the day, this is not fabric, this is paper. That's why pattern drafting is important, so there's no mistake. So I'm going to go ahead and add extra piece as well of pattern paper and just apply my tape again, then construct my zip allowance. And I'm going to be taking 1 inch for the zip allowance. You can take 1.5 inches, whatever suits you. So here I've added the paper and I'm taking my 1 inch zip allowance. Then I went ahead to cut. Once this was done, the back panel was ready, and that's my zip allowance, and you can't go wrong with it. Our back isn't straight, so that explains why that place is a bit bendy, and you will have a perfect dress. I explained this before, I'm gonna emphasize it again. If you want, just add that 1/2 inch allowance on the back panel shoulder and leave the front panel. Or you can add the 1/2 inch on the front and the back panel. It will be okay as well. The neckline as well, you can decide to make it a V-neck, a square neck, or whatever neckline you choose to have. But the basic measurement is 3 by 3. You can have 3.5 by 3.5 as well. Now we've come to the end of this tutorial. I hope this tutorial has been helpful, and thank you so much for watching right through to the end. Guys, I'll see you in my next one. Till then, I want you to look after yourself, and bye for now.